What's up, sons? It's Blind Rod with Son of a Tech once again, and today I just wanted to bring to you guys an issue that's going on with some of the new Bitmain ant miners, specifically as it pertains to Bitcoin mining. Right now, as some of you all may know, we are in a position where it is time to invest into mining equipment if that is your intention for the future, to build a mining farm in preparation for the next halving, which is slated to be sometime in early 2024. And as you do that, it's important to be aware of some of the changing designs that are happening that are making some of these units less reliable. So let's get into it right after a word from today's sponsor. Today's sponsor is BT Miners. BT Miners has been a longtime sponsor of the channel and a proven reliable source for ASIC miners. If you're looking to purchase ASIC hardware from Bitcoin to Dogecoin miners, they are available for purchase on bt-miners.com. BT Miners is a trusted source by both ASICminervalue.com and CryptoMiner.com. Follow the affiliate link in the description and tell them SOT sent you to support the channel. Welcome back. So a community member brought this to my attention, but I have also been recognizing some issues around different people that I've spoken with, as well as personal experience with one of these units. And it appears to be that some of the latest Antminer Bitmain ant miners, right, are having issues with the new designs for multiple reasons. So let's go ahead and go over those reasons. It's coming from this article on compassmining.io. And basically this article goes over all of the issues, the summary, but it says beginning in 2022, Bitmain, the largest single designer and manufacturer of Bitcoin mining ASICs, began implementing a few production changes to various versions of their S19 series. The scope and possible repercussions of these changes are still being understood as are the motivations behind them. Our purpose in writing this report is to help shed light on the most opaque and misunderstood parts of the Bitcoin industry, ASIC manufacturing, and perhaps help increase each miner's operation efficiency. To date, Compass Mining's operations team have identified 3 issues with 2 versions of the Antminer S19 series miners. This is the S19 90 terahash and the S19 XP. Other versions could be affected as well. I personally had the S19 XP Pro and experienced these same issues, by the way, in Texas, but let's go ahead and take a look at the summary. Here we go. Number 1, lack of peripheral interface controller, PIC on units, meaning individual hash boards cannot be easily controlled. This also is going to prevent a lot of people from troubleshooting properly. A PIC kit is commonly utilized within ASIC miner troubleshooting, and this can obviously create issues with being able to troubleshoot miners to a certain extent. So I did do a video on a complete ASIC miner workbench, thanks to Scott's Crypto Mining having me come out there and take a review of how they repair miners, and this is some of the things that I learned. So luckily that's why I know and understand this. Number 2, use of aluminum plating on one side of the hashboard, causing increased chances of units overheating. Now with the S19 XP Pro, it would not run in my warehouse with the rest of my miners. All the rest of the miners worked, right? So the Koi miner, for example, which is finicky with temperatures as well, but with some additional airflow, we were able to get that mining. But other than that, we have S9s in there, we have S10s in there, we have the L3 Plus, we have the iPolo V1 Mini, we have currently the KDA, the Kadena miner, the IB Link BMK3 running in there with no issues, and of course all of the GPU rigs. So the threshold for the temperature on the S19 XP Pro, as I had experienced it, was not conducive to that. Now, I already had other issues. About after a day or so, all the hash boards quit work, or all of the hash boards pretty much quit working on that particular unit, and I had to send it back. Luckily, Coastal Crypto Mining, who's a sponsor of the channel or has been in the past, was very gracious about it, especially because the unit got damaged in shipping back to them. So thanks guys for helping me out there. That being said, there's clear issues with these units from a thermal perspective, and if you are mining in an area where it's going to get hot in the summer, you're going to have issues. This also brings up the fact that moving into the summer months and with the deployment of these en masse, right, coming onto the network, we could see a slowdown of the Bitcoin network as a lot of these units start to experience failures and shutdowns. It's going to be really interesting to see exactly how much of the hash rate is impacted by this, but there is a lot of hash rate in Texas. Number 3, consolidation of all components onto one side of the board, causing increased likelihood of hashboard errors. From the manufacturing change above, we can identify a few possible outcomes for Bitcoin miners running newer generation units. Without a PIC, units will not be able to continue under hashing on 1 or 2 boards. Aluminum plated hash boards will have significantly higher failure rate and warmer temperatures than those built on printed circuit boards, PCBs. Aluminum plated hash boards will have a higher servicing need due to increased chances of traces, chips, and other parts tripping in error. And non-Bitmain ASIC repair shops will have a higher difficulty in repairing ASICs due to the use of the aluminum plate, which increases the difficulty of replacing malfunctioning chips substantially. So it does talk about deployment context and how some were in their partner facility in Texas, where humidity and heat may be concerns due to the location, but nothing miners have not handled before. So definitely going to be probably in the summer months in Texas looking at buying sturdier units. We'll talk about a couple of those options too. Another possible cause here could be the batch of units from Bitmain. It's common knowledge in Bitcoin mining not to buy the first batch of Bitcoin ASICs. Unknown errors are often only revealed over time, so it's best to have others find them out first. And I think that's a really good point too. And as it pertains to like my strategy in particular, which is, purchasing mining equipment, I am not really looking for brand new miners right off of the shipping truck, right? I'm looking for used miners that are still going to go up in value, right? The previous releases of the S19, like the model that clearly had some issues here anyways, but for example, in the previous market, or actually, I guess the S9 would be a better example, right? We went from like $2,500 to them being worth like like $200 during the last bear market. And then during the bull run, the S9s went back up to like $600 to $700. So there's still an increase in value of even really old equipment. Now I wouldn't be purchasing any S9s, to be completely clear, but there is still that potential. So if you look at buying older units, it's not necessarily a bad idea. The PIC is a type of microcontroller that contains a processor, core memory, and various input-output peripherals on a single chip. PICs are used to control and monitor a wide range of devices and systems, including industrial equipment, automotive systems, and consumer electronics. In ASICs, a PIC sits on top of the hashboard and allows each hashboard to be spoken to individually. Without it, you have to address the unit as one unit instead of 3 hashboards. And what this essentially means is that you're going to have a harder time replacing individual hashboards. It's already difficult to do that in a lot of these miners, but without a PIC kit, you aren't going to be able to reflash them into basically a new unit, which is common practice here in the past, especially on the T17s and so on, which have been experiencing some issues as well. So although a small part, the lack of the PIC means miners may not underhash by running on fewer boards as well, which means that if you have one board go out, what I'm understanding on one of these units is all of them go out, which is actually very telling, because on the S19 XP Pro that I had issues with, it could have been a single board, it could have been a single hash board, but it didn't continue to hash on the boards that were good, if that was the case, right? I didn't get into it fully. That being said, like if I have the S9 have a hashboard die, the miner continues to mine on the rest of the hashboards. It appears in this case that doesn't happen. So you're down not just the one hashboard, you're down the entire unit in these cases. So that means the miner fails completely. The aluminum boards are the largest issue, they say, and swapping to an aluminum-backed single-sided PCB on some Antminer hash boards, as is common with Avalon or WhatsMiner units. So previously, almost all Antminers used laminated multi-layer PCBs with traces built into the layers of laminate material. One side of the board displayed the chips and connected by the traces, and the other side displayed the heat sinks, the power side. Recent manufacturer changes we noticed beginning around Q4 of 2022 swapped out laminated multi-layer PCB for aluminum-backed single-layer PCB, which put both power and signal squarely on the same side of the board. This change increases the overall trace density, which causes a higher probability of producing an irreparable broken or blown trace, as confirmed by Bitmain technicians Compass spoke with. There's positives and negatives to this approach, such as cheaper materials, decreasing production costs. Newer S19 XPs also have one large heat sink, which may transfer heat better than multiple heat sinks baked into the PCB. However, the approach has two possible drawbacks: poor heat transfer due to the aluminum material in conjunction with the current chassis design, and crowding of components on one layer of the PCB. The chassis itself has also been criticized when compared to the tubular Antminer S9 or the WhatsMiner M20 and M30 series, which operate comfortably at higher temperatures. In the Compass operations team's opinion, swapping to aluminum plated board without changing the chassis design will likely result in higher failure rates for the machines. The issue here is that the aluminum acts as a vehicle for heat, as it transfers heat across the entire thinner side, single-sided PCB. Therefore, we expect to see higher PCB temperatures on these boards in areas that might not normally receive as much heat on a double-sided board without the aluminum backing. Moreover, the heat emissions of the aluminum, especially in an oxidized form, will cause connective heating of the space inside the chassis. A solution to this is an air-cooled environment would be to increase the mass airflow sufficiently to dissipate the heat stored within the miner, a different design or stronger fans. So here's what to do that they say. Number one, third-party firmware that may allow the miner to run on one or two boards. There are a ton of different options out there, like the Beagle board, for example, and you can potentially get those flashed over to a new OS. I know there's a lot of people use Hive OS, for example, but there's also a bunch of different other options as far as that's concerned. Hive OS is just kind of entering the market recently. So third-party firmware that allows for lowering the frequency and voltage to a level that keeps the miner cooler, and specifying the optimal environmental conditions for these miners, including the upside for immersion, optimal temperature and humidity settings, and optimal voltage range for machine longevity. And so there's going to be a lot more that goes into the design for these particular units. I just would say pay attention to that when you are deciding to build out a farm with them. I personally would lean towards the WhatsMiners at this point, like the WhatsMiner M30s and the M50s, probably the M30s because they're older units, right? If you want to see kind of like a quick breakdown of profitable Bitcoin miners, you can go to btminers.com via the link down in the description below. They've been a sponsor of the channel for quite some time. I'm not sure what this S19J Pro 96 terahash model is. I didn't know they had one. But if we go over to Coastal Crypto Mining, which we'll have links down below, there is the S19J. This one's been extremely popular lately. I don't know the internal design of this necessarily, but I do want to get my hands on one because these have been getting picked up a lot to put in immersion cooling and overclocked for 130 terahash a pop. And it seems to be the ones that the large mining farms have now recently started purchasing. I do not know for a fact that they have a better design. The better design overall, like I said, seems to be, at least right now, to keep things safe, like the M50 and the M30, which is the old school tubular design that you may be familiar with from the Antminer S9. So it continues to keep that design, but the hash rate is increasing because obviously the technology is increasing. So these are kind of some of the thoughts surrounding purchasing hardware right now. I think it's very important to be aware of these issues so you don't end up in a position where, well, I invested, $6,000 into this unit and it's bunk. I can't utilize it in my environment, or it's broken right off the bat. I gotta get it repaired. Luckily, during the bear market, hopefully you can get that repaired in some form or fashion before you start to hit a bull run. So that's another reason why it's better to buy during the bear market. But there you go. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next Tuesday. Also, check out my e-course on sonofatech.com, as well as my exclusive live streams covering what I'm mining at this time and purchasing over on sonofatech.locals.com.